I never thought my own children would speak to me like a stranger, but that morning, as I walked into the living room, I heard the words that shattered something inside me forever. "Just don't tell Dad," my daughter whispered urgently. My son laughed. "Why would we? His opinion doesn't matter anyway." My heart froze. I stood behind the half-closed door, watching my two children, the same ones I raised with every sacrifice I could afford, discussing how to transfer my own property. "Without me," my daughter-in-law said loudly. "We just need his signature. He'll sign anything. He's old. He doesn't understand stuff like this." Old didn't understand. They had no idea I was standing right there. No idea I heard every cruel word. No idea the man they assumed was weak had already planned something they knew nothing about. Then suddenly my son turned, saw me, and stiffened. "Dad, you're awake." I just stared at him. "My opinion doesn't matter, right?" Silence. My daughter stepped forward nervously. "Dad, it's not like that. We were just talking," but I could see it in their eyes: guilt, annoyance, fear. They wanted my property. They wanted my signature. They wanted everything, except me. The worst part, they didn't even try to deny it. Instead, my son tossed a file on the table. "It's just paperwork, Dad. A small transfer to secure the family assets. Just sign it. A small transfer." They thought I was blind. The papers basically handed over the house, my house, to them. I looked at their eager faces, their impatience, their greed. They thought I would sign instantly. They thought I would stay quiet like always. They thought I would never fight back. But what they didn't know was this. A week earlier, I received a confidential letter from my lawyer, a letter that changed everything, a letter my children had no idea even existed, a letter containing a truth that would flip their plan upside down and leave them begging for forgiveness. And as I held that pen in my hand, staring at the papers, they tried to sneak into my life. I already knew I wasn't signing anything, not this time, not ever again. I always believed my family was close. We weren't perfect. No family is. But for years I thought my son and daughter still saw me as the same father who worked day and night to raise them. Maybe I held on to that belief longer than I should have. Maybe I didn't want to see reality. Things began changing slowly, very slowly. It started with little remarks. "Dad, you don't get how things work anymore," my daughter would say whenever I asked a simple question. My son laughed whenever I tried using a new phone. "Just leave it, Dad. You're too old for this." I brushed it off as normal impatience. Kids grow up. Life gets busy. I convinced myself they didn't mean any harm. But disrespect doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds like dust on furniture. Slow, silent, unnoticed, until one day you finally see how thick it has become. The first real sign came during a dinner gathering. My daughter-in-law invited her parents and some cousins. I was sitting at the head of the table like I always had. But when they arrived, she walked straight up to me and said, "Dad, can you sit over there tonight? We want Mom and Dad to take the main seats." I stared at her. Wasn't I still the head of this house? Before I could respond, she pulled out the chair beside the corner and said, "Come on, Dad, it's not a big deal." It was a big deal, but my son just looked down at his plate and didn't defend me. That night, as I ate quietly at the edge of my own table, I realized something had shifted. I wasn't respected the same way. I wasn't valued the same way. I wasn't needed the same way, but I stayed silent. Silence is a mistake parents make too often. A week later, I overheard my children saying I was becoming slow and forgetful, that my opinion didn't matter much anymore. They said it casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world to talk about your parent like that. I stood in the hallway, listening, feeling something inside me break. Still, I said nothing, but disrespect, once started, never stops on its own. One night I found my daughter-in-law looking through my old documents in my room. She didn't notice me standing there until she turned around suddenly. "Oh, Dad, I was just organizing things for you." Organizing? She had never once organized anything for me. When I asked what she was looking for, she forced a smile. "Just your property file. We want to help you handle things better." Help, that word suddenly felt dangerous. Something was going on. I could feel it. I just didn't know what, yet it happened on a Sunday morning. The house was unusually quiet. I went downstairs to get tea, and halfway through the hallway, I heard voices from the living room. My son said, "He'll sign anything. He trusts us. We just need to convince him it's a routine document." Routine document? What document? My heart pounded as I moved closer, quietly. My daughter-in-law replied, we need the transfer done quickly. If we delay, we'll miss our chance. My daughter added, Mom left everything to him. If he signs, we get it now. Why wait? I felt the cup almost slip from my hand. So that was it, my late wife's property, my home, my assets. They weren't waiting for inheritance. They wanted everything now. Suddenly, my son spotted me and froze. Dad, good morning. My daughter smiled too quickly. We were just discussing some family paperwork. Family paperwork. They thought I was a fool. Later that evening, they approached me with a file that looked too thick to be simple. Dad, my son said gently, can you sign this? It's just a formality, you know, for tax purposes. Tax purposes. They assumed I would sign without reading. They assumed age had made me helpless. I took the file and flipped through the pages. He kept talking fast, trying to distract me. Dad, it's nothing complicated. Just transfer of management. Just on paper. You still own everything. But the document clearly said, full transfer of ownership. My house, my land, my savings, all to them, without hesitation. I closed the file slowly and looked at them. I'll sign later, I said calmly. My daughter-in-law's smile tightened, but we already scheduled the agent. It needs to be done soon. Soon, always urgent when someone wants to trap you. That night, I called an old friend, someone who had been a lawyer for 30 years. I told him everything. He came the next morning, looked at the document, and said one sentence that sent chills through my body. Don't sign anything. They're trying to take everything while you're still alive. My mind went numb. My own children, my own flesh and blood. Why, my lawyer friend looked at me seriously. There's something else, too. Something in your property file they don't know about. I frowned. What do you mean? He pulled out a sealed envelope. I found this while reviewing your old documents. It's from your wife, and it changes everything. The envelope was old, yellow at the edges, the handwriting unmistakably hers. My late wife's. My chest tightened as I opened it slowly. My hands were shaking, not because of fear, but because her handwriting still made my heart ache. Inside was a letter, and another sealed document. I unfolded the letter first. My love, if you are reading this, it means I could not tell you personally. Everything I built with you belongs to you, not to anyone else. I know our children will grow, and I pray they grow with respect. But in case they don't, I have taken steps to protect you. The property is fully in your name, and no one, not even the children, can inherit it without your written consent. I want you to be safe. I read the letter 3 times, my eyes filling with tears each time. My wife wasn't just loving. She was wise. She saw something long before I did. My lawyer then handed me the sealed document. This is the legal amendment she made. She never told the kids. They don't know anything about it. I opened it. It stated clearly, all property belongs solely to the husband. Children can inherit only if he willingly chooses to include them. He has full control. My children thought my signature was a formality. They thought I was old, weak, easy to manipulate, but this document changed everything. For the first time in months, I felt a sense of power return. I asked quietly, should I tell them? My lawyer shook his head. No, not yet. Let's see how far they're planning to go. And just like that, a new clarity settled in. I wasn't weak. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't trapped. I had more control than they could ever imagine. But instead of confronting them immediately, I decided to wait, to watch, to see just how deep their greed went. That evening, my daughter-in-law gathered everyone in the living room. Her tone was sharp. Serious, Dad, she said, we need to finish the property transfer this week. We already talked to a buyer. A buyer? My own children had already started planning to sell my home, behind my back, without my consent. Without my knowledge, my heart turned cold, but I didn't react, not yet, because the next step would reveal everything. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about everything I'd heard. My children weren't just disrespectful. They were ready to erase me from my own life. But instead of confronting them, I waited. I wanted to see their true intentions. The next morning, they came at me with a different strategy, fake affection, Dad, how are you feeling? My daughter-in-law asked in a voice sweeter than honey. My son sat beside me and put a hand on my shoulder. We were thinking, maybe you should rest more. Let us handle the complicated things. Complicated things, they meant my property. My daughter joined in too. Dad, we're not trying to hurt you. It's just, we want to secure the future. You know how life is. Oh, I knew how life was. I also knew how people change when money enters the room. They kept circling around the same topic. We should finish the paperwork. It's better for everyone. You won't have to worry about anything anymore. At one point, my daughter-in-law even brought tea and said softly, Dad, please trust us. We're your children. I almost laughed. Now I was their dad. But just days ago, they said my opinion didn't matter. Their behavior was so sudden, so unnatural, that it felt like watching bad actors pretend love on stage. Around noon, they changed tactics again. My son sighed loudly and sat next to me. Dad, you know we're struggling. We need this transfer. Please don't make things hard. There it was. The emotional blackmail, as if I was the problem, as if their greed wasn't the reason for all this. My daughter sniffed dramatically. Dad, if you don't help us now, everything will collapse. Don't you care about us? I watched them lie with such confidence that for a moment I wondered if they truly believed what they were saying. But then something happened that pushed me over the edge. I walked past my son's room later and heard him whisper angrily on the phone, Don't worry, he'll sign, he has to, and once we sell the house, we won't have to deal with him anymore. Deal with me, as if I was a burden they were forced to tolerate. My hands shook, but my anger turned into something colder. Clearer, these children weren't going to stop. They wouldn't feel guilty. They wouldn't be ashamed. They wanted everything, and they wanted it now. I didn't mean to find it. I was passing by the dining table when her handbag fell, and papers scattered across the floor. One caught my eye because it had my signature on it, except I had never signed that document. It was a forged transfer request. They were planning to use the fake signature to push the process through if I refused. My chest tightened. My own children had turned into strangers. When I confronted them later that night, it turned into chaos. My daughter shrieked first. Why were you going through her bag? I wasn't. I said calmly, it fell. My son snatched the paper from my hand. Dad, you're overreacting. It's nothing. Nothing. They had forged my signature. They had crossed every limit. They dragged me into the living room and the family meeting began. My son started yelling, Why are you making this so difficult? We're doing everything for the family. My daughter-in-law added sharply, Do you know how embarrassing it is when elders behave stubbornly? Stubbornly, because I didn't want to lose my own home. My daughter chimed in next, Dad, please stop acting like a child. Just sign and make this easier for all of us. Something inside me snapped. I will not sign anything, I said firmly. Silence fell. Then my son slammed his fist on the table. You're blocking our future. Why can't you understand that? You're living alone. What do you even need the house for? My daughter-in-law clicked her tongue. If you won't sign willingly, then we'll find another way. Another way? I knew exactly what she meant. They expected me to break, to fold under pressure, to cry, plead, or feel scared. But I didn't feel fear anymore. I felt clarity and a strange sense of control. I stood up slowly. Do whatever you think you can, I said quietly. Their eyes widened, not in respect, but in frustration. They thought I was bluffing, that I was weak, but they had no idea about the document my wife had left or the lawyer waiting for my call. The meeting ended with threats, anger, and slammed doors, and late that night, as the house fell silent, I overheard one more thing. My son whispering harshly, if Dad won't sign, then we'll make him. Make me how I didn't want to know, but I had to be prepared. The next morning, I woke to loud voices outside. When I opened the door, two men I'd never seen before stood in the porch, holding files and carrying briefcases. My son walked up behind them. Dad, he said with a smirk, these are officials. They're here to help with the transfer. Help, another lie. The men stepped inside without even asking. One of them scanned the living room and nodded. We'll just need his signature, and we can finalize everything today. Today, they were trying to trap me before I could react. My daughter-in-law appeared with tea and fake smiles. Dad, please cooperate. You're making this harder for everyone. My heart burned. Not just with anger, but with disappointment so heavy it felt like grief. I looked at the men. I won't sign anything. My son's face twisted. Dad, stop being dramatic. One of the men stepped forward. Sir, this is routine. No, I said firmly, it's not. There was silence, tense, heavy. My daughter hissed from behind them, why are you doing this to us? Doing this to them? I had given them everything their whole life. And now, because I refused to hand over my last piece of dignity, they were acting like I was the enemy. The men eventually left, realizing I wasn't going to cooperate. But my children, they weren't done. That afternoon, I heard them arguing in the other room. What do we do now? He won't sign. We can't wait anymore. We need that house. We already promised the buyer. Promised the buyer, so it was true. They had already begun selling my home behind my back. Something inside me hardened permanently. I went to my room, shut the door, and called my lawyer. He answered on the first ring. Are you ready? He asked. Yes, I said. Do everything we discussed. His voice remained steady. Good, because there's something else you need to know. Something about your children's plans. They've been preparing more documents, and they're not stopping unless you stop them first. My stomach tightened. What kind of documents? He hesitated. They're planning to declare you mentally unfit. I froze, mentally unfit. My own children wanted to take away my rights, my decisions, my freedom, just so they could take my house. At that moment, any last piece of hope I had for them shattered. I wasn't fighting for just property anymore. I was fighting for my dignity. The very next day, the tension in the house was unbearable. I could feel it in the air, a silent storm waiting to break. That afternoon, my son arrived home earlier than usual, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him were two stern-looking men, dressed sharply in suits, carrying briefcases and thick folders. My heart sank. These are representatives from the legal department. My son announced, a smug grin playing on his lips. They're here to assist with the paperwork. We just need your signature, Dad. I stared at the men, then back at my son. I already told you. I'm not signing anything. One of the men cleared his throat. Sir, refusal could complicate matters. We're here to help you avoid trouble. Trouble, I echoed, voice low but firm. My son's smile twisted into something colder. You're only making this difficult for yourself. The men moved closer, their presence overwhelming. I felt cornered. Suddenly, one of the men pulled out a stack of papers. We have a medical report here suggesting that you may not be fully capable of handling these decisions. It would be in everyone's best interest to consider a guardian for you. I blinked, stunned. The words medical report and guardian hit me like a hammer. This was the ultimate betrayal, my own children weaponizing my health against me. I gritted my teeth. Who authorized this report? The man smirked. Your children did. They requested an evaluation to protect the family assets. My son leaned in. Dad, it's for your own good. Just cooperate. My voice was quiet but unwavering. I am capable, and I will not be forced. The room was thick with tension. The men tried to push the papers towards me, but I pushed back mentally and physically. My daughter-in-law appeared, her face set like stone. You're making this harder than it needs to be. I looked around the room, realizing this was more than just a family dispute now. It was a battle for control they wanted to snatch at any cost. I clenched my fists. I wouldn't let them win. The phone call came as a shock. A voice I hadn't heard in years, my old friend. The lawyer spoke urgently. Listen carefully. I've discovered something that could turn this whole thing around. Your wife's original will, the one no one knows about, has surfaced. My breath caught. I thought that was lost. It was hidden deliberately, he explained. But it's real and it gives you full ownership and control. The kids don't have a legal leg to stand on. I sat back, relief mixing with disbelief. So you're saying I still have the power? More than you think, but you need to act fast. That night, I asked my lawyer to bring the documents to my home. Together, we went through every page, every clause. The will was clear. All properties and assets remain under my name. The children inherit only what I decide, and only after I'm gone. It was a safeguard my wife put in place, a shield against greed and betrayal. I felt a surge of strength. They thought I was weak. They thought I would fold. They had no idea. The next day, I called a family meeting, but this time I was ready. I showed them the documents. The look on their faces was priceless. My son stammered, Where did you get that? My lawyer found it. I said firmly, and it proves that none of this property belongs to you unless I say so. My daughter's eyes widened. But that can't be true. Oh, it is. I said, voice cold. And if you continue down this path of deceit, you'll regret it. They were stunned. Silence filled the room. I realized then how far they had been willing to go and how deeply this betrayal had cut. The room was thick with tension. My children were speechless, their plans unraveling right before their eyes. But then my son's face darkened. If you think this ends here, you're wrong. He spat. You've kept us in the dark, controlled everything, but we deserve more. I looked at him, sadness mixing with anger. You had every chance to talk to me, to respect me. Instead, you chose lies. His voice rose. You're selfish. You think you can decide our future without us. My daughter-in-law stepped forward, her eyes blazing. You're old-fashioned and out of touch. We're the future. The house belongs to us. The shouting grew louder. Words flew like daggers. I listened, hurt but unmoved. Then I spoke calmly, but with authority. I have already changed the will. Gasps filled the room. My daughter dropped her cup. You what? I amended the will to leave the property to a charity my wife supported, not to any of you. I said, feeling the weight of the moment. Shock turned to disbelief, then to desperate pleas. Please, Dad, don't do this. We can change, we promise. You're making a huge mistake. But I shook my head. The real mistake was betraying your own family. The room fell silent once more. I realized this confrontation was not just about property anymore. It was about respect, love, and the consequences of greed. They had tried to erase me, but I was still here, stronger than ever. After I revealed the secret will and the sealed document my late wife had left behind, the atmosphere in the house shifted completely. The confident, almost arrogant faces of my children crumbled one by one as the reality of their position hit them like a tidal wave. The documents were unbreakable. None of the property or assets would transfer without my explicit consent, and until then, they had no legal claim. My son's usual bravado vanished. Instead, he paced anxiously around the room, searching for loopholes, desperate for some angle that would let him seize control. But the truth was clear. The legal amendment stood firm like a fortress, protecting what was mine. The lawyer, who had stood by me for years, stepped forward. His voice was calm but firm. Attempting to forge signatures or to coerce your father into signing is illegal. These actions carry serious consequences. I looked at my children one by one. The girl who had once been so proud now looked at the floor, ashamed. The daughter-in-law's face paled, and her usual sharpness was replaced by unease. My son's clenched fists betrayed the anger bubbling beneath his frustration. This can't be real, my son finally said, his voice cracking. You can't just do this to us. We've done so much for you. I shook my head slowly. Respect is not about what you do for someone. It's about how you treat them. You showed me none of that. The words hit harder than I expected. I saw the anger fade to resignation. It was a devastating moment for all of us. They had been so sure, so greedy, but now their entire plan was falling apart before their eyes. The years of pretending, of manipulating me, were suddenly exposed as nothing more than a house of cards. Just as I thought the battle was over, my daughter spoke quietly, almost hesitantly. Dad, there's something else. The room held its breath. I turned to her, my heart pounding. She hesitated, then whispered, There's more you need to know. Something about my brother. The tension thickened. I knew this wasn't over yet. That night, my daughter told me what I feared most. My son had gotten himself mixed up with people I didn't trust. Dangerous people. People who were impatient and ruthless, pressuring him to force the sale of the property regardless of consequences. They're not just after the house, she said, voice shaking. They want the money quickly, no matter the cost. I felt a surge of anger and sadness. The man I had raised was no longer the boy I once knew. He was trapped in a world of desperation and greed, and dragging the family down with him. I knew what I had to do. After consulting with my lawyer late into the night, we made a plan. It wasn't just about protecting the property anymore. It was about protecting what remained of my family and my own peace. I decided to transfer the property into a legally binding trust, a trust managed by an independent, reputable party, someone with no personal stake in our family drama. This way, no one could sell or misuse the property without proper oversight. At the same time, I set aside a small portion of the inheritance for my grandchildren, those innocent ones caught in the crossfire of greed and betrayal. They deserved a future untouched by this toxicity. When I gathered my family to tell them my decision, the shock was immediate and fierce. My son's face twisted into a scowl. "You can't do this, you're throwing everything away." My daughter-in-law's mouth opened in disbelief. "This isn't how things are supposed to work. You can't just take the house away." I stood my ground. "This is exactly how it has to be. I will not allow my family to be torn apart by greed." My daughter looked at me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, are you sure about this? It's going to destroy us." "It will destroy what's left of this family if I don't," I replied quietly. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then my son's voice dropped low and cold. "If you do this, don't expect us to be a part of your life anymore." The threat hung in the air like a knife, but I wasn't afraid. I was done bending to their demands. After the trust announcement, the house that once held memories and laughter became cold and hostile. My son stormed out, slamming doors and muttering threats under his breath. My daughter-in-law packed her things, refusing to meet my eyes, disappearing into her own world of bitterness. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time, I felt alone in my own home. It was painful, yes, but also strangely freeing. I realized I had been living for others for far too long, trying to hold a family together that no longer wanted to be held, sacrificing my peace, my health, my dignity, all for people who barely respected me anymore. I made a decision not just for my own sanity, but for my future. I rented a modest apartment nearby. It wasn't grand, but it was mine. A place where I could breathe, think, and heal. With the trust legally established and all documents signed, I finally felt the weight lift from my shoulders. The quiet was a balm. Weeks later, I received a letter from my children. Some had sent apologies. Others begged for forgiveness. All wanted one last chance. I read their words slowly, weighing every sentence. Forgiveness was possible, but trust had been broken, shattered like fragile glass. So I wrote back simply, "Respect matters more than money, and now you know it too." The silence that followed was telling. It wasn't a victory in the traditional sense, but it was a reclaiming of myself, and a promise that I would never again let greed strip me of my dignity. After months of turmoil, the house that once echoed with shouting and betrayal grew quiet. The trust was firmly in place, and the legal battles had cooled. I had walked away from the toxicity that nearly destroyed me. Living in my small apartment was a daily reminder of the new chapter I was writing, one defined not by wealth or possessions, but by dignity, peace, and self-respect. Old friends began visiting more often. Their warmth filled the spaces left empty by broken family ties. I found solace in simple things, morning walks, cups of tea by the window, and quiet evenings with a book. One afternoon, a letter arrived, this time from my grandchildren. Their words were innocent, full of hope and love. They hadn't asked for anything except to know their grandfather. It was a healing balm to my heart. Despite everything, I realized that family meant more than property or money. It meant forgiveness, growth, and sometimes painful letting go. I learned many things during this painful journey, lessons I wish I could share with others before they walk the same rocky path. Respect is not something you demand. It is earned through kindness, honesty, and listening. Greed destroys families faster than any outside force ever could. Trust broken is hard to rebuild, but not impossible if both sides are willing to try. I decided to share my story publicly, hoping it might help others caught in similar storms. I spoke about the importance of setting boundaries, of knowing when to stand firm, and when to let go. Most importantly, I reminded people that inheritance is not just about money or property, it's about legacy, love, and the memories we leave behind. As I look back now, I see that this was not just a battle over a house or money. It was a test of character, faith, and endurance. My children chose a path I could not follow, but I chose peace, and peace is worth more than all the wealth in the world. So here's my final message to you. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too. Because at the end of the day, what we leave behind is not just property, but the way we treated those we love.